read. Mark, would you like to read the Open Public Meeting Act statement?
Thank you. This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law. This meeting of June 12, 2018 was included in notice sent to the newspapers of record and posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building and remain continuously posted as required notice under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice has been available to the public and is on file at the office of the municipal clerk.
Thank you. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could just have a moment of silence. Our friend, longtime resident and father to CFO Bob Merlo, let us offer a moment of silence for Joseph A. Merlo, who passed away on Friday, June 6, 2018. Thank you. Roll call vote, Lori.
Council President Phillipsburg. Yeah. Council Vice President DiGirolamo.
Here.
Councilman Davis.
Here.
Councilman Lutz.
Here.
Councilman McVeigh.
Here.
Don't we usually pay me the bills before discussion?
I put it in the order that I saw the previous agenda.
All right.
If you want to address that first, I'm sure that you can do whatever you wish to do.
Well, we'll go with what you gave us, so,
As council meetings.
yeah, usually we do. So we will go with the public discussion on agenda items.
I'm Joe Miner. I live at 392 South Main Street in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. One day I'm going to learn how to know where I live. Okay. Town Council meeting redevelopment. Both the mayor and the council want gentrification. It starts simply. For example, make the poor people pay to park. The developer's motivation is profit. The town adopts a plan with upper class rental. This will be the eventual source of the developer's profit. The town gives the developer a pilot exempting the development from school tax. The pilot, through increased school enrollment, results in increased real estate tax for all. Her own construction of 400 units is already set up to do this. As long as Section 8 keeps increasing, the town does not impose rent, impose rent control. Landlords will continue to buy, repair, and rent. Because of the beautification, the rents will be high. Eventually, we will lose our $6 million state supplement to Phillipsburg and our $33 million supplement to our school district. The real estate taxes will triple. The poor will be gone, and the rich will take over. However, and this is a really big however, Union Square lacks the capacity to handle the traffic without widening the bridge. The railroad will run next to the residential area. As the newness wears off, it will become a noisy place to live. Phillipsburg will become artificial-looking, shabby new buildings without state subsidies. Then there are those who want to make Phillipsburg a place to visit. I don't, but not so much to make the idea unattractive. It will allow some people and some congestion to Union Square. The developer's plan contains an extension of 3rd Street to River Road. In my plan of 1998, it included a plan of traffic that eliminated the bottleneck in Union Square. The problem at the time was that the railroads would not allow 3rd Street to cross the railroad. Apparently, the developer has a way of solving this problem. However, the long-term developer plan would block entrance into Union Square from River Road in favor of residential housing. The proposed development is a nightmare. However, if the railroad allows a crossing and it is used to decongest, a much smaller scope, longer-term development plan based on rebuilding what we have does make sense. You might see my 2006 plan. There it is. I did my part. I'm done. I hope.
Thank you, Joe.
It's done.
Good evening, Bernie Fay, 1070 Logan Street, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Following up on some discussion on resolution 2018-103 on the transfer to section 8. I just have some, I mean, I know everybody's been talking about this RAD program. I went down to Trent a couple of years back and I learned a little bit about the RAD program. One of the things I did learn is that you don't need to be affiliated to apply for the RAD certification and fill out the application for the paperwork. You just need another agency to work together with you to administer the vouchers, which is what the Section 8 program in Phillipsburg does currently. There's 3 people that work in that office. And I'm feeling there's some ethics laws violated because nobody that I know of, between the mayor and council, have gone up to these 3 individuals and discussed their future. What would happen to them if the program went to the housing authority? I know Mr. Rumfield has graciously offered my wife to go along on several occasions. However, understand, she's been in that office for 28 years. She'd like to see that term go through. What happens if this transfers through and somebody like that chooses to stay? Has it been determined that she could file for her union rights and bump somebody that has less years in? And then is it fair to that person that they don't even know it, that they may not have a job the next day? There's 2 other people in the offices. What happens to them? They have bills to pay as well. Are they going to be offered that same courtesy to Mr. Rumfield to go across the road? I guess what I'm saying is we can still pursue any questions about the RAD program. However, I think you need all the people involved to discuss it in the room instead of just one at a time, so that you could have total understanding of what it is, okay? Because it's something that is very complex. And then also, I have our code of ethics dealing with our meetings. In the past, I was never allowed to vote on anything that had to do with Section 8 or the Housing Authority. JP was never allowed to vote on anything that had to do with anything that had to do with the police department. And I have our code of ethics right here. And it pretty much states as far as officers and different businesses in town. And it does identify the Housing Authority board members, assistant director, executive director, and and board members. So I think that's a violation of our ethical rights for Ms. DiGirolamo to cast a vote. And it states in our ethics code. And I find it hard to believe with all the ethics violations that are going on in this town, nobody's read ours. It's only 3 pages. How can nobody not know it? And it's 3 pages long, and we're violating it. But I'm asking, sit back, readdress it, get Mr. Rummerfield, get Ms. Fay, get the mayor, and get Mr. Folker in the room. Come up with a resolution that works for everybody. Don't leave one person out. Do it as a whole, do it as a group. The only way it's going to be successful is if we work together at it. Right now, take a step back. Let it go. You haven't even discussed these people's futures yet. Are they going to have a job tomorrow? Are they going to be fired after 28 years? They have families. My wife's the only income right now of mine. I'd like to know that I have it for a few more weeks. So thank you.
Just 1 second. I'd like to reflect Council President Fulper's back. So he's here. I'm going to turn it over.
Yes, I apologize. My daughter was graduating 8th grade this evening where I saw Mr. Skirbo, and he must have beat me here. I do apologize. Mr. Fay, I apologize for missing half of your speech. I'm not sure what I missed, but I have a feeling that we've already discussed it in the past.
Just so you know, it was out of order, so we did allow it to come in the order of the agenda.
Okay.
Payment of bills is usually, so we did not cover that. Go ahead.
What is this?
That's what you missed from me. I figured you wanted me to.
You misjumped.
Okay. So I will read this. Do I need to read this right now?
No,
Okay.
anytime,
All right, thank you.
before you
Right
vote.
here.
Before I vote on,
Except
No
if you weren't voting on it tonight anyhow, I don't think.
okay, I will look at it.
We're on public discussion.
We are, okay. I just want to state, I did catch the tail end, but for the record, we did meet with both parties. You are aware of that, right, Mr. Fay?
I understand that, but because both parties have discussed like different parts, one, they need to be in a group together. Because the RAP program isn't just like one particular, it's one thing. All they need for a application is just an approval and a conjunction with an agency that would administer the units, which is what we do right now. And we have control over those units with our inspectors, with our yearly inspections.
From my conversations with the mayor, he has assured me that regardless of the way we vote this evening, your wife is assured her position, and I can't go further because she was not rights noticed. But it does, I did hear in your voice some concern, so I would say rest assured that he has stated that her position is secured.
At the town hall.
At Town Hall, that is correct. Okay, just so you're aware. And what we're voting on this evening is not the RAD program, where we're voting on transferring the Section 8 program to the Housing Authority. We're
That's
not voting
my
on
wife's
that.
program.
Well, correct, but your wife is still at Town Hall. She's a Town Hall employee. She's not here, I can't discuss it further.
I guess you're losing me.
Move on to Bill here.
What we can do is, if it's all right with you, I'll talk to you after the meeting, and then I'll be able to clarify for you with regard to being on record. I believe I would be correct with stating that she has not been rights noticed, nor has she given me permission to discuss that here this evening. So I can't discuss it openly and publicly, but I will speak with you.
Now, how about our ethics code of voting, which
I
I
can,
think we should address that when we vote.
I will defer to Council Vice President DiGirolamo, who will address that before the vote. She has been in touch with the attorneys.
this is our code of ethics right here.
Oh, I'm familiar with it. I've done a lot of reading it. So,
And that doesn't conflict of interest.
but I'm not going to comment on that because I did get a legal opinion. I do believe Ms. DiGirolamo would probably feel better suited to.
I'm perfectly comfortable discussing it at the time. Yeah.
Would you like to? Okay.
No, we'll do it at the time because Mr. Timmons waiting.
Okay.
So I believe it's proper to give him the floor right now.
And because I was not here, I will heed to her request. Mr. Timmons.
Bill Timmon, 230 South Main Street. I again, and I've spoken to you about it before, about Resolution 218-103. I believe it's going to be a poor move. The town used to have a housing committee a few years back that made a profit on their enforcement of these various rules. The housing authority, I don't believe, is qualified to handle the transfer and/or implementation properly. The employees in the town hall have a hand on this program. They handle the inspections, they handle the clearing, and they enforce what's going on as far as the people that are involved with the program. And I again urge council to either table this until there's more investigation and not pass it currently, because I think it will be poorly handled that way rather than the way the town handles it. And that's just personal opinion, and the fact that I think if they re-examine the old housing plan that Phillipsburg used to have, where they turned a profit, it would be beneficial to look into that before they act too hastily on this proposal transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons.
Good evening, Sandra Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights. I totally agree with Mr. Tinman. I also have the same concerns as Mr. Fay. Do we know if the Housing Authority is going to be hiring more people to inspect these units?
I don't have that answer for you.
Mr. Rummerfield, maybe after the meeting you could answer that question. I also understand you are transferring Town Section 8 housing to the Housing Authority so that we can bring the RAD program into town. Mrs. DiGirolamo, can you explain how this RAD program raises literacy rate by 20%, which is what you had alluded to in our last meeting?
I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards about it, because there's a significant amount of data about the program as a whole. In addition to it, it would be bringing more revenue and tax dollars to the town of Phillipsburg itself. But we're actually not here to talk about RAD tonight. Okay. All we're talking about is asking the state to transfer. We, the town, are not physically doing this act. It's the state making the decision. We're just asking the mayor's office to allow the state to decide if we should do it or shouldn't do it. This is not the council moving this.
So you're saying the state.
So you are
actually put this on the agenda?
Bernie.
You are stating that this would bring more money into the town than what Mr. Tinman had suggested to the committee?
I don't know the previous committee, but the research I did on redoing what they intend to do with RAD, which is better curb appeal, better buildings, redoing all this construction, which is going to bring new jobs, it's going to bring a lot of things. The rateable of this property, so the Housing Authority, if you're not aware of it and haven't read the budget, provides in lieu of taxes to the town of Phillipsburg. That amount will go up significantly as this property value is increased.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Last thing, the other ordinance that we're talking about is the waste disposal. Is this at the old location of Carl's Glass?
Yes, ma'am.
So as I understand, this is already operating.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the prior town council, where I know Mr. Lutz had argued against having recycling center dump over in that area, we already have an existing program that has not yet been approved. Is that how I read this?
I think you're misunderstanding it. Number one, for years, ever since I was even on first council, I turned down the junkyard. It's not a recyclable, it's a junkyard. But then if you notice, if you were at the last couple meetings, I did approve it for the thing. This is totally different. All this man is doing is driving his trucks in there and dumping his bins off of the truck. They're not loaded, they will not be loaded overnight, and that's all he's doing.
And in these bins, what are contained? They're empty
Nothing,
bins?
they're empty bins.
So why is it considered a waste disposal area? I'm concerned about those particular two words, waste and disposal. Because we are stating in this ordinance that it is for waste disposal.
It says storage of waste disposal containers. That doesn't mean that they're full all the time. That doesn't mean that they're empty. All they are is containers. that they have, that they go on to the roads and put them in front of people's houses and stuff like that. That's all it is.
And they also have a waste disposal truck for collecting and hauling residential refuse. My concern is, at what point do we check for ground runoff, any hazardous waste? Because even if they're empty, if there's storms, there's any leakage, that can be an issue. And that's not necessarily a question for you, Mr. Lips, it can be a question for town council. Because nowhere in this ordinance does it state that this gentleman or this company will never store filled containers. It does not say that. So we could be running ourselves up into a hazardous waste situation. And secondarily, I'm not quite sure how this works in with the idea of the renovation of the town and bringing people in.
I can answer that.
Oh, delightful, thank you.
So the planning board met, and the planning board unanimously, despite my calling out the addition to the planning board redevelopment plan that added this use as a permitted use into the development plan, I specifically spent 10 minutes addressing it, they unanimously adopted it with it. Excuse me.
I
So-
don't know if that's true. Can we address
It's
that?
absolutely true. It's 55 pages long. I read every page of it. It
Uh-huh.
specifically allowed this use. We asked everybody on the planning board, and they all acknowledged they knew it was there and they voted for it anyway. So actually, when this comes up, I think we're going to be tabling it because until we adopt that redevelopment plan, I don't know that there's a purpose for this.
Right.
So
and that
unless
answers my question.
The meeting I missed where they did not adopt the redevelopment plan and asked for a revision, that would be the only way this would need to change. But the redevelopment plan, as it was approved by the planning board, if the planning board wants to renege on that, they have that option. But until they do that, what's been given to council has this permitted use already in it.
All right, thank you for that explanation. At the same time, though, if that's the way it's going to be, you as town council members have the power to ensure that this ordinance has something written in, that there will be no storage of waste containers and there will be certain inspections for hazardous waste as well as groundwater contamination. Thank you very much.
Mr. Morris, I thank you for your comment.
Bill Timmy, I want to inject another problem here with the Section 8. As it stands right now, we know how many people are on Section 8 from the town, which I believe the number is 210 or thereabouts.
That's correct.
The county has not given the town any numbers that they're sending or allowing in Phillipsburg. And as well as the state, they are giving no numbers as far as the town and haven't been able to verify how many Section 8 tenants are state tenants. And this is one of the problems we have. The mayor, I believe, has asked for those numbers from the state and he's been totally ignored. This is why we have the influx of people that we're getting now. And from what being a business downtown and seeing the quality of what's moving into town, I really want to object to this hardly, because until we get hard numbers and how it's going to be controlled on the county and state level, and how many bodies they're shipping in here once they're qualified for Section 8, because if you on that roll, you can come from anywhere in the state and move into Phillipsburg, and we've had an awful lot of influx in the last couple of years. Less than desirable.
Well, Mr. Timmon, what I can say is that the county has ceased providing us with the voucher program at the time. For the time being, they are now sending them to our sending districts, Alcolo, Powhatan. There are no Warren County voucher programs or vouchers being used currently, well, being sent here currently. There are voucher programs from the county still being used here.
So I believe there are, but they're
Right.
not giving the town a count of who's.
And I'm not sure.
I'm not asking for
Right.
people, I'm not asking for addresses, I just want a number of the people that are being placed in
Correct.
Phillipsburg, and the same on the state level before you make any changes. affecting what we already have and control quite well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons. Mr. Morissette.
Hello, David Morissette. 5 Fairview Heights, Phillipsburg, New Jersey. I'm coming to address I guess it's ordinance 2810 with the waste disposal containers. The application for LMR with the planning board was unanimously rejected. Is that correct? And the recommendation goes back to the town council to not allow LMR to conduct business.
And we overruled it.
I haven't seen that.
Mr. Morissette, you're on the planning board, yes?
Yes.
So we will take you at your word.
Okay. Now, regarding the waste disposal containers, a resident came up with concern and said, approving this waste disposal container thing, that's not going to allow LMR to come in because we, the planning board, don't want LMR. And the answer was, no, the waste disposal container issue involved trucks being able to pick up waste disposal containers at the riverfront development down there on Riverview Drive. That was my understanding of what that waste disposal container issue was on the planning board. I think if we look at the minutes of the planning board and consult with the planning board members, I think you'll find that the waste disposal container issue that was approved was specifically not to allow LMR to conduct business. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morissette. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Rumfield.
Well, I just need to comment on a few of the things that were mentioned tonight about Section 8, because it was kind of a mishmash of topics, a number of misrepresentations, not intentional. I just think some people don't know exactly what's happening. The councilwoman said it's the states, it's actually the feds, it's the feds that were requesting to transfer to Section 8. I think what Mr. Timmons was talking about was the old neighborhood preservation something. Mark is familiar with it, where abandoned properties were turned over to the town. I think Scott Thatcher was the attorney back then. And then the town would renovate it and sell it, get it back on the tax rolls. That has nothing to do with Section 8. And as Mr. Timmons said, the idea there was not so much to generate a profit, but to put the money back into a foreclosed house and regenerate the housing stock as much as they can. For the record, this housing authority is a high performer. We do generate a profit, so we don't operate at a loss. We generate a profit every year that we put into reserves that we could hopefully do things like the RAD and address some of our issues and capital needs. As it was said, we're not talking about RAD. We're talking about the management of Section 8. It's 210 units. It's not affected by the county, the state, or DCA's vouchers. The 210 units won't go up. It's not like all of a sudden we're going to get 210 units and tomorrow we're going to say, hey, now we got 250. As a matter of fact, I think if we look at the City Hall's 210 units, because of the decline in the decline in administrative funds coming into Section 8, I think they're only rented up at 190 some. It's not even 210 units at the town.
It's 192.
It's 192.
That's what they did among.
So it's 192 even though there's 210 units approved. That's not going to go. In terms of the inspection, most likely we'll be having a full-time inspector that will be utilizing between the Section 8 and the public housing. In terms of personnel, that's not what we're talking about, so I really don't want to get into that. That'll be worked out, at a later date if and when Newark approves the transfer and Washington, D.C. approves the transfer. In terms of ethics, there is no one in the Housing Authority, and certainly not the councilwoman, I don't mean to tread on your speech, but certainly not the councilwoman's spouse, that is going to benefit from this transfer. We're talking about the operation of Section 8 to allow us to apply for, we already applied for RAD, but allow us to operate a RAD program. We still haven't been given a RAD program. We're on a waiting list. Mr. Fay is correct, we don't need a Section 8 program for RAD, but then we're going to go into something called a PBRA, which Councilman Davis and I have had some discussion about that. There's two types of RAD, PB, project-based voucher, and PBRA. We're going project-based. Project-based does need a partner with Section 8. We feel that we can better control who's coming in on the waiting list, the local preferences, if we have the project-based vouchers and not PBRA. I'm not sure if I hit everything that was brought up.
Mr. Overfield, if I may ask one question with regard to the Section 8 program. If the council chooses to transfer the program to the Housing Authority, is that contingent upon approval from the state?
From the feds.
So this is, okay, so from the feds. So this is just us giving you permission to apply? Or is it saying we'd like to transfer?
The council sending a request first to Newark to say
Correct.
we would like to transfer the management of the town Section 8 program to the Housing Authority.
Okay.
And we attempted to do this 4, 5, 6 years ago. Council was on board at the time, and the Housing Authority board members were on board. We sent it down to Newark. They approved it. It was sent down to Washington, D.C. For some reason, Washington HUD thought we were trying to create another housing authority in Phillipsburg. In effect, what this would be doing is actually reducing a housing authority. But because of the declining operating subsidies, or the admin fee to Section 8 back 5 years ago, and not knowing how far it was going to spiral down, we didn't pursue it. So we never pursued the transfer with the Washington, D.C. HUD. But the council's not really you can't give it to us. HUD has to approve it. And what you're asking on behalf of the council and on behalf of the Housing Authority is to request that the management of the Section 8, 210 units, be transferred to the Housing Authority, like every other housing authority and municipality that I'm aware of. Municipal governments just don't administer housing programs, housing authorities do. We're only asking that you request a transfer like everyone else. I think I hit most of these points, but...
I only have one more question. Should the council and the feds approve the Section 8 transfer, do you, or is it legal? Okay, because I'm not very familiar with how the Section 8 program, other than the fact that that's how much money we pay out every month.